On this week's podcast, Tim and John talk about Charley Kirk. May he rest in peace.
Bald,
blind,
and buddies. TGIF, Timmy C. How you doing, good doctor?
I'm doing good. It's, the last gasp of summer here. It's a pretty beautiful day out there.
The upper Midwest is nice this time of the year, right?
Oh, it's great, yeah. The little crispness in the air at night, it's nice.
I was sending out emails to potential clients today, and I just said, I'm terribly dismayed to see the end of summer. I tend to like the seasons. I should preface this by saying I could take 2.5, maybe 3 seasons. I kind of like the beginning of spring. I like April until January. I love fall. I like the first half of winter. The second half I could do without, in the first half of spring, But I sent out an email and I said, as dismayed as I am to see the end of summer come and go, it is a reminder that we can put on sweatshirts now, chili. I can make my chili. That football is in full swing and baseball playoffs and football, obviously. And to that end, by the way, before I forget, Notre Dame has a big game. It's hard to believe this, but the Wall Street Journal actually has an article that says Notre Dame is facing a do or die, and then the byline says, and it's only September.
Wow.
Notre Dame puts butts in the seats. I get it. So they're a good story. There was no anticipation. I did not anticipate that we would make it back to the national title this year. Could things surprise me? Of course. That being said, starting with Miami on the road, which we lost in a kind of a heartbreaking fashion. But to be fair, I think Miami was the better team that night, and now we have to face Texas A&M at home. So are you going to be watching the game, Timmy?
No.
No? Why not?
Minor league football just doesn't appeal to me as much anymore. Now that they're getting...
There's an element of me that agrees with you, and I understand that to that end. However, it is my first love. When people ask me what are your favorite sports, and my kids are always like, would you give up rooting for the Yankees or giving up rooting for Notre Dame? I always say the Yankees,
Oh, yeah.
Notre Dame is my first love, then the Yankees, then the Giants. So it's kind of in that order. But I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong. But speaking of Notre Dame, by the way, why don't you file a pre...
Yeah.
What am I trying to say?
A teaser.
Warning shot. Yeah, a teaser. Yeah.
So next week we're going to record. It may run a week or two out. But Father Jenkins, the former president of the University of Notre Dame, has agreed to chat with us for a little bit. It should be fun, exciting, informational, all that stuff.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting having 3 domers. I was telling my brother, and he goes, well, that'll be really interesting for all of you people who went to Notre Dame. I said, yeah. So to that end of our dozens and dozens of fans, the single numbers that are Notre Dame graduates, could you spread the word? Let people know. We're going to talk. I'll ask. We'll ask probing questions, but I'm fascinated by the role of being a university president, and I had submitted questions in advance. And one of the things I think that fairly should be asked is, have university presidents become nothing more than sort of glorified fundraisers in chief? Because I'm dismayed by the state of higher education in a lot of ways, as I'm sure you are as well, having worked in that area.
Yes.
Okay.
You don't say.
Well, Timmy, to that end, there is a famous saying in politics that events, dear friend, events determine things. And we had teed up sort of just 2 days ago that we were going to talk about your son's reading list. He's a sophomore, I think, in
Correct.
high school, right? Why don't you just, as a teaser here, why don't you give us sort of what we were going to talk about? We will ultimately, but events dictated otherwise, and I'll tell everybody what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, the school district has a set of books that sophomores can read, and then teachers pick a subset of those books. And the books that are chosen do not necessarily bear a strong resemblance to what I would consider good English education or writing. They're often quite new. They often represent certain things, and I think the representation is probably more important than the English, and we're going to talk about it.
Okay. The one I will take issue with, and we'll talk about this later, is the Alice Walker, The Color Purple. That is a classic. I will go to bat for that. It might have themes and structures that you don't agree with or that may not be germane. But, yesterday was the 24th anniversary of September 11th. And one of the questions it asked is, should kids be taught about this? And, there's an age question for me. My daughter, who is 8 in 3rd grade, she came home and she said, is today the day that planes flew into buildings? It's a judgment call. I'm okay with it, but I think history, for all of its goodness and badness and its warts, needs to be taught in all of its complexity. How do you feel about that, Tim, before we get into today's discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a cliche, right? Those who don't learn from history must repeat it. But there are lessons there.
I always like the line that history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes.
Yeah.
But today, unfortunately, we're going to get into a very serious topic, and again, I think it's important at the very top that both of us, and I'll allow you to say it as necessary, we condemn political violence in all forms, whether it's left, right, up, down, straight, crooked, what have you. Every form of political violence is wrong. And unfortunately, a young man, a father of 2 by the name of Charley Kirk, 31 years old, was assassinated by a bullet on September 10th. And, now we're having discussions about that and his right to free speech. I have very strong opinions about this, and they may surprise you, actually, Timmy, but I'll allow you to hold court because I know you said, and one of the things that you and I did is we were texting back and forth, and I said, you know what? Let's not text. Let's keep it contemporaneous, and let's actually have a discussion about this because this is a big deal. So why don't you go ahead, Tim?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, this hit me hard. I've paid attention to Charley Kirk. I clearly don't agree with everything he says, but I followed him. I'd recognize his voice and, watch him on YouTube. And so I'm kind of at a loss. I always say it's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. And, what happens when your candle gets snuffed out so easily? Our whole MO here, John, is dialogue, right? Dialogue is an answer, at least part of a solution. And that can get you killed. So this hit me hard.
And it did me as well. And, one of the things that I used to remind my students that I may disagree with what you're saying, but I'm going to fight like hell for your right to say it. And for those of you who have been regular listeners to the podcast, I taught constitutional law. I tend to be, in nearly all but a handful of examples, a First Amendment free speech absolutist. And the thing that I celebrate is, hate speech is protected just as much as any other speech. And whether or not you agreed with Charley Kirk, he was engaging students at a university level. And it goes so far, actually, George Will, who I, speak of quite frequently, he invoked William Buckley and said William Buckley would have seen in Charley Kirk a kindred spirit because he went to the universities. His entire persona was based on prove me wrong. We can get into the ins and outs of things that he may have said that were at best controversial, sometimes may have crossed the line. I don't agree with him advocating for someone bailing out the person who attacked Paul Pelosi, the husband of Nancy Pelosi, and calling him an American hero. But again, you always say, what do you say, Tim? Sticks and stones, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you made a good point, John. So just this week, Charley was on a college campus in Utah. The the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, came out with its campus free speech survey results. Have you seen these?
I have not.
So among college-age kids, who the shooter was one, 34% of them now believe violence is acceptable, at least in rare cases, to prevent a controversial speaker from speaking. And roughly 20% of people surveyed said it was sometimes or always acceptable, right? So the university used to be a beacon, right, of free speech and expression. It is no longer. And that's part of this.
You're going to be sitting there a while if you're going to expect me to disagree with that. And that's one of the things that I'm going to talk to Father Jenkins about, whether or not university presidents have essentially become sort of figureheads, and how do we get back to universities writ large being sort of a place of open dialogue? Because if you're not going to do it there in your 18 to 25 year sort of span where you have sort of, for lack of a better term, a safe space, where is it going to happen? Because let me let you in on something, folks, particularly young people. It's not likely going to happen in the corporate environment when you get a job. And so it's dismaying to me on that front, number one. And number two, violence is never right. It's not. I understand in the execution of foreign policy that sometimes violence is necessitated, and one of the things I always say is SEAL Team 6 was not told to grab Osama bin Laden. I'm pretty sure they were ordered to kill him. That's in the execution of foreign policy. To that end, however, because of somebody's words does not mean that you have an assassin's veto, meaning a bullet. You should not be able to do that. And, it's important to remember that whether you agreed with Charlie Kirk or vehemently disagreed with him, he is a father of 2 young children. And those children are now growing up without a father because he said things that are controversial. Speech can't hurt you. Speech can lead to things. I understand that. You can't run into a crowded movie theater and yell fire. You can be charged with reckless endangerment. But simply challenging your feelings on transgender rights or homosexuality, I adamantly, in every ounce of my being, disagreed with Charlie Kirk on a lot of things. To that end, however, I'm going to go to my grave telling you he had the right to say it, and he was not engaging in violence. It was the person who shot him that was engaging in violence. Am I wrong, Tim?
Words are not violence. So Freud has this quote that something like, the moment somebody used words instead of picking up a rock, civilization was born. This is the dismantling of civilization when we go in the other direction because of words, right?
Yeah. And, in a lot of ways, and I say this really as a positive reflection of you, Timmy, because, again, I want to be as clear as possible. Political violence in all of its forms is wrong, period, full stop, end of sentence. Charlie Kirk, to me, reminds me a little bit of you, Timmy. And I say this.
I take that positively. I do.
The Babylon Bee actually had a headline, and I don't know how I feel about this. We can get into some of the things that are happening, the flags at half-mast and so forth. But to that end, he reminds me a bit of you. The Babylon Bee has a headline that said, "Earth deemed unworthy of Charlie Kirk," and he was brought back to heaven. And I'm not sure how much of what he actually says he believes and how much of it is actually just for lack of a better term, clicks and driving eyeballs and such. Because, that old adage about Howard Stern, it was quite literally almost a 50-50 dichotomy. They would ask people, why did you listen to him? And half loved him because he was so outlandish. And he's not dead. I shouldn't talk about him in the past tense, but when he was in his, prime in the 80s and the 90s and so forth. And then they would, half would say because they loathed everything he stood for. But again, if you're a revenue generating enterprise, which Howard Stern clearly was, I don't think people care, right? And I wonder how much of what Charlie Kirk says he actually believes. And I say this about you sometimes. I know you're a classic Reagan conservative, and sometimes, though, you are a smartass. And I think you just say things to sort of poke the beehive, right? I wonder how much Charlie Kirk was like that, and we're never going to know now because he is no longer with us because of an assassin's bullet. That's unacceptable.
Here's the thing, though, John. Much of what he says is not controversial, right? America is a great country. The free market lifts people out of poverty, right? Up till 10, 15 years ago, there are 2 genders, right? Those things are not necessarily controversial. So sure, he has some hot takes. And you always say, if you listen to me long enough, you'd hear me make mistakes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think, and he's out there so much that some of his takes, on the fly probably are, edgier than you might think. But I think that's probably part of it.
They're more for the driving the revenue than they are for the reality of how we feel.
They just came out in the heat of a debate. You know how we're all like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he would debate college students, to his credit, and his entire persona was based on the idea of prove me wrong. Yeah. I'm not an expert on Charlie Kirk. I'd heard about him tangentially. I'm familiar with him. I'm familiar with some of these folks. But again, where I am getting upset is, and again, I don't want to engage in whataboutism. I loathe whataboutism, Timmy, which is, the Democrats said this and the Republicans said that. But again, one of the things that I always respected about President Obama was, to me, you may not agree with him politically, but he exudes class. And one of the questions that was asked one time is how come you haven't stood up and said something about X? And I forget what exactly the issue was. But again, I'm reminded of, think of all the things that got you in a white hot heat during the George H.W. Bush administration. They pass, right? Yeah. And he used to say, look, the president has a very big microphone. And why I'm saying that is, it's one thing if a Democratic politician comes out and says, do X, but I think a lot of times people are drawing a false equivalency. And where I'm extremely disappointed, and this isn't a whataboutism about who's worse, the Democrats or Republicans. This is about the presidency. And today, in an interview, President Trump was on with Fox News, and they asked about how are you going to deal with this, and his response I sent you this morning. This is the president of the United States. This is a direct quote. He said the radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy. He's calling his fellow Americans vicious and horrible. That does nothing to advance the football. Does it, Tim? I put a tremendous amount of blame at his feet not because he's Republican. It's not. It's not because his name is Donald Trump. It's because he's the president. People always ask, why does the United States have to be, the superpower? Because we do. We have a certain responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. I don't think he understands that.
This may be whataboutism, but I'm going to do it. I remember a particular presidential candidate who called people deplorables, right? So horrible, deplorable.
Okay,
they're all doing it, John.
Hold on a second. Are you not willing to see the difference between someone on the campaign trail saying something that's caught off camera?
For the highest office, the campaign trail, to put them in that seat.
Again, you're smart enough. There's a difference between being the candidate and being the person. Am I wrong? And number one, I've said this and you just said
Practice like you play, John. It should be the same.
Fine. Okay. I'm going to tell you that Republicans and Democrats are equally at fault, okay? Concede this point. I don't agree with that, and the studies don't indicate that.
We'll talk about that.
Okay. But again, being a candidate for president, being caught on camera saying something. You remember when Mitt Romney talked about the 47% don't want to work, blah, blah, blah. He's in a room of exceedingly wealthy people. Somebody has a phone, they catch him. Does he believe that? I don't know. But again, the point I'm getting at is you of all people have to be willing to see the foundational difference between somebody running for candidate or running as a candidate for president, getting caught saying something off the cuff, and a president going in an interview the day they catch this fellow and call the other side vicious and deplorable or horrible. That to me is wrong. The president has an opportunity to turn down the temperature and instead has decided to throw gasoline on the embers. And he's making it sound like it's the left. Timmy, I'm sorry, but Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the senator from New York, has one of my favorite lines. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. And regardless of the organization you pick, whether it's the Cato Institute, a very libertarian institute, the National Institutes of Health, others, the Strategic International, SISA, I'm trying to remember what the acronym stands for. The breakdown of violence from right wing to left wing is a dramatic dichotomy. It's something like 3-1 right wing for every left wing. So this contention that, Charley Kirk it's the left making this happen. It's not. Both sides bear responsibility. One side bears a lot more, as I see it. And the numbers back it up, Tim.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that. A couple points here. Number one, do I wish the president said something different? Absolutely. Right? Do I think it was well chosen? No. Does he use that? I mean, is that how he tends to communicate, in simple phrases that actually connect with people? Yes.
Tim, he's talking about fellow Americans being vicious and horrible. That's not simple. That's wrong.
Well, it's simple and wrong. Right.
Okay, fair enough. So, two things can be true at the same time. Yeah, all right, fair enough.
Is it presidential? I don't think so. But does he have a right?
That ship sailed a long time ago.
Does he have a right to free speech? Yeah. Right. But here's so we'll come back to the statistics part.
All right, but before you do come back,
yeah,
I would be remiss, and again, I'm going to go back to this. It was a coup d'état on January 6th.
No, let's not.
Tim, hold on a second. In the presidential debate, when he was the president of the United States, he was asked to condemn the Proud Boys. He said, "Proud Boys, stand back and stand by." After the election in 2024, he then pardoned those Proud Boys, including Enrico Tarrio as well as Stuart Rhodes, both of whom have been convicted in a federal jury of their peers of seditious conspiracy, facing decades in prison. To me, these are not small ancillary matters to this discussion. These are part and parcel of the discussion. I will take full blame for Obama saying deplorables. I will take full blame for the Democrats turning up the heat in certain instances. They're not the president. That, to me, is the foundational difference. Until that's addressed, I don't know if this problem is going to be solved.
The other thing to think about is, I think, just at some level, Charley Kirk was his friend. Right? And if somebody shot my friend in cold blood, I will probably not be the most articulate gentleman in 2 days. And maybe I should stay away.
Yeah.
Maybe I should stay away from the press. But, when that's your go-to, I don't know. I give him maybe I give him too much latitude here, but I
And
would
again,
I would be busted up.
I 100%. And again, let me back up. I'm not trying to say Trump is the reason that this happened. There's no justification. To his credit, Spencer Cox, who, by the way, I know you can't see Timmy, but he looks like me. He's bald, and my buddy goes, "Yeah, if you weighed 100 pounds less." I was like, "Oh yeah, thanks, man."
Thanks,
But the point is he's 50. He just turned 50 in July. He's bald. He looks like me. So anyway, he was the one I give a lot of credit, and he basically said, "Look, we got to find an on-ramp here, folks." And saying it's the Democrats doing it and the Republicans saying it's the Democrats doing it, the vice versa, that's not going to solve anything. What I am concerned about, though, is I don't think that Trump recognizes the magnificence of his responsibility, and simply saying something about fellow Americans being horrible is not going to turn down the temperature.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
It's always my fellow Americans, and it's hard to simultaneously say, fellow Americans, you're horrible. Like the two don't connect,
and
right?
Again, you have to be able to see the difference between a candidate being caught on the campaign trail and the president giving an interview the day they catch the suspect. Come on, Tim. Give me that at least.
Well, and I can see the difference in the stature of the office. Like, this is going to go down in history, right?
But again, that's not going to solve anything.
Right.
But go ahead.
I do want to talk, because this comes up, this whole temperature of the room thing. And I would contend this is not a temperature of the room problem. So, this dialogue, it gets so heated, the temperature, you hear this all over the place, right? What it is there are ideologies which are used to and have and need to prevent people from entering that room of conceptualization of debate. The mainstream media used to have a lock on the door of that room. The tech companies had a lock on the door of that room. They suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop, right? And Charley Kirk is going into the belly of the beast, the church of liberal, progressive, woke ideology. He's at the altar, and he gets shot to keep him out of the room, right? It's not a temperature of the room problem. It's an ideology problem.
Yeah, and the other thing that I will point out is people are like, well, there's something broken with politics. That may very well be true, but politics is here to stay. It's like you can bitch and moan all you want about the Department of Motor Vehicles. You still have to deal with them. And politics, there's a famous quote, why is politics necessary? Because number one, people have opinions, and number two, people are egotistical. I mean, you and I talked about this. It takes an ego to say, yeah, let's have a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, what do we know? We don't, but I think we have an interesting story in that, you're blind, I'm bald, the whole shtick, right? But we've been buddies who've talked like this for 30 years. Yeah. Whether you choose to listen is up to you. We need politics.
Listeners, he was wrong about that. Whether you choose to listen, you should listen. Tell everybody listen. He didn't mean that, guys.
John Boland did not mean what he just said. No. You should listen. That you have an obligation.
You must. Yes.
And we're going to use our Notre Dame Catholic guilt and guilt you for that. But my point being is politics isn't going away. Disagreement isn't going away.
Right.
What needs to go away, though, is violence as an extension of disagreement. Right?
So yes. So I. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm done. I have 2 points. 2 questions I have to ask you, and then
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to tell you. So this idea of keeping people out of the square debate, right, the public square, most recently with violence against Charley Kirk. It's interesting. I don't know if you've been following across the pond the story of Graham Linehan. Do you know this guy?
Not familiar. Tell us about him.
He is a writer who is responsible for some, well-loved comedies and things on television, one of them being Father Ted over in the UK. So he has made the conscious choice at this point to talk about gender ideology and his belief that there are two genders, things of that sort. He's lost jobs, he's been sued, he's lost tons of money, he's in court cases. Was most recently arrested by 5 police officers when he arrived in Heathrow for making 3 tweets.
I did hear about this.
Yeah.
Recently arrested. I didn't put the two together, but I did hear about this.
So,
but yeah, please continue.
So they're more polite across the pond, right? The state is the agent of suppression of speech there. Here an American took it into their own hands violently, right? But I don't think there's a heck of a lot of difference from we're going to destroy your life, we're going to destroy your livelihood, and we're going to take your life. So I think this is the extreme end extension of cancel culture.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk got canceled. This thing is officially forever on this planet, right?
Right, and it's for things that he said. If you
Yes.
take away the simple reality that stuff you learned in kindergarten and preschool, sticks and stones may break my bones, words can never hurt me. The point being is you're supposed to engage in the arena of ideas and illustrate that your ideas are preferable, superior. A bullet doesn't solve anything, right? But again, people that through history that have sort of pushed the envelope of acceptability, whether it be Martin Luther King or even Larry Flint, the publisher of Penthouse or Hustler magazine, excuse me, they've been shot.
Yeah,
Gandhi. It's not right.
Gandhi. Huh? I mean, Sir Thomas More was killed by the state for standing up for what he believed. Right. Yeah.
Timmy, let me ask two questions.
Sure.
Because I'd be remiss if I did not. And again, I'm pretty much a First Amendment absolutist, as you know. I happen to be a gun owner. I was given a gun for being best man in Jimmy's wedding.
Yeah.
I own a gun. I can legitimately say that. I fired a gun. I believe in a truly free society. You should have the right to own a gun. There have been two times in my life where I have completely lost hope. Not in a like I'm not going on with life sense, but have decided it's better for me to step away. One was after Newtown Square, and one was this past November with the election. It's not that I was in love with Kamala Harris, as you know, she was not my choice. It's just that I don't find President Trump to be an acceptable choice. That's me, right? Don't shoot me over this, right?
Yes.
That being said, however, is there any discussion that you think can be had about guns? Because I'm not asking whether or not it's guns, because per capita, Canada has as many guns as the United States does. But why does this unique phenomenon happen only in the United States? And this fellow had a bolt-action rifle that could shoot from hundreds of yards away. I mean, is there a discussion? My brother doesn't think there is. Is there a discussion to be had because it was a conservative? Because thoughts and prayers are not cutting it anymore. Is there a discussion to be had about guns? I'm not saying get rid of guns. I'm saying about gun safety, about limiting access to it, these kinds of things.
So this gun was a Mauser 30-06. So that basically is early 20th century technology. It's a bolt action rifle. You have to every time to reload. My father hunted deer with his father's 30-06. Right. This is you're not going to get this with any particular law, any particular ban. If you want to hit a deer at 100 yards, you can hit a person at 100 yards.
Fair. Okay, but
that's not going to help a lot of these.
But you understand the question I'm asking, right?
It's the evil that exists in the heart of man.
But why is the evil only geographically located between the Atlantic and the Pacific, with Canada to the north and Mexico to the south? The Onion runs a headline every other day that someone is killed, 3 or more people are killed by guns. And they run the headline, they change the byline, the location, and so forth. And all it says is, nothing can be done to prevent this. And then underneath it says the only nation in the world where this routinely happens. I'm asking, I don't know the answer. I'm legitimately asking, though, Is there a discussion to be had about guns? Because I lost all hope after Newtown. I know I'm going to lose again. It just seems to me the prevalence of guns, maybe in combination with the evil in hearts of Americans. Is it too dismaying to say, or too unpatriotic to say, maybe it's the evil in the heart of Americans?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and as with anything, right? We can have discussions about anything. I guess the way I think about it is, the state is given the power to use violence, right? That's sort of one of our trade-offs for living in civilization. And I think our founders were smart in that they did everything else with checks and balances. And I think the gun ownership is the ultimate check on the power of the state. And I think that is, with any compromise, it has costs. And I think we can talk about where that compromise exists. But honestly, I think, there was a stabbing in Charlotte, right? There was that's the evil that exists in the heart of man, right? And I think, we can talk about guns, but I don't think that's the main problem. It's just a catalyst.
I have to lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I happen to agree with you that having the right to own a gun in a free society is the ultimate check. What I find hysterical, and the Babylon Bee has done a headline about this, is It says something along the lines of man obsessed with the Second Amendment forgets the United States government has nuclear bombs. Like it's really cool that you have your handgun. It might not be as efficient as you think it is if we, launch a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
But joking aside, here's another question. It struck me. The president has every right to order flags at half-staff. He has every right to bestow the Presidential Medal of Freedom on folks. You may not agree with that. That's important to understand, folks, because I always ask people, well, what if Obama did it? How would you feel? It's real easy to say, oh, Charley Kirk shouldn't get this, or this person, Rush Limbaugh, shouldn't get this. But, Bill Clinton bestowed it upon X, or Obama. You know what I'm saying? Keep in mind the fairness of it, as it were. One of the questions I do have, though, is the NFL last night, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but I wanted it to be extemporaneous. The NFL observed a moment of silence last night, and I'm wondering if private enterprise should be engaging in that behavior, because it leads down a slippery slope of, well, did they do the same thing when, Josh Shapiro, or he didn't die, but there was a state lawmaker in Minnesota that was assassinated by, political violence. Did they do the same then? Because I respect Charlie Kirk's family. The president can do whatever he wants. I'm wondering if private organizations, if that's kind of a dicey scenario, observing a moment of silence. I'm not going to win any friends by asking this, because it's like, well, what's the big deal? It's a moment of silence. But did you do it for other people that were assassinated? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a free organization, can do what they want. And I think if you're going to make a mistake out of respect.
Fair. Touche. Fair. Well, Timmy, again, I think it's important that we say this one more time. We condemn in all of its forms political violence. It's unfortunate. The ones that I feel the most sorry for are Charlie Kirk's children. They don't have a father. The man was 31 years old. You may not agree with what he had to say, but he was saying words. He wasn't doing anything else. Just, it's that old notion that I tell people, when a country music station decides not to play rap music, that's not censorship. That's a business decision. Turn it off. Do the same thing with Charlie Kirk. If you don't like him, win in the arena of ideas.
Absolutely. And I think that's the hardest thing, that I think in some ways he was doing the thing that we should have more of and killed for it.
Well, Timmy, I do want to give the answer to the trivia question that's still hanging out there, which is the largest state in the country that does not have a professional sports team? In terms of population, the largest state, not geographically, because Alaska would obviously be the answer. What is the largest state in terms of population that does not have any of the 4 professional sports teams? And that's NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, National Basketball Association. Mm-hmm. Do you know?
So largest by population?
Yep.
Oh, hold on. Let's see. Alabama.
No. It's actually a little bit of a trick.
Okay.
The answer is Virginia, because the teams play in Washington, D.C.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's actually a little bit of a trick. It's
that
Virginia. The teams play, and in fact, the Washington Commanders played last night on Thursday Night Football.
And got whipped by the Packers.
They sure did. So that leads to my next question about the NFL. There are 4 NFL teams, 4, that are neither named after a state nor a city. What are they?
Ooh, I could get that one.
So, for instance, you have the Chicago Bears, right?
Yep.
Named after the city of Chicago. You have the Arizona Cardinals, named after the state of Arizona. There are 4 out of 32 teams that are named after neither a city nor a state. What are they?
Ooh, I got one off top.
Don't ruin it, because it's a little bit of a trick. So see if you can get it.
Yeah.
But Timmy, I'm going to start with my whack job, if that's okay.
Sure.
You cool with that?
Yeah.
So there are more and more studies done on the police. And, when police would come in and testify that 25 years ago, before cameras and the omnipresence of cameras and so forth, that, juries looked at the police as gods. Same thing I would say for me when it came to doctors. I'm not picking on your profession. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, Timmy. You're a well-renowned, revered doctor, and rightfully so. I give you all the credit in the world. But before I met Katie, I had always assumed that what a doctor told you was, absolute truth, right? I've come to find out that may not be the case. And if you have 10 doctors in a room, you're going to get 11 opinions.
Yeah.
So my whack job this week is not picking on his medical credentials. It's picking upon his stance. And it is the Surgeon General of the great state of Florida. His name is Dr. Joseph Ladapo. Have you heard of this fellow?
No.
Okay. Well, again.
It's Florida, though, so I'm excited.
Yeah, there is a website called Florida Man, which is all the crazy sites and so forth. Anyhow, just as I will criticize the left, after the George Floyd incident in Minnesota, there was this absolute overreaction of people like, that's it, we got to get rid of the police. No, two things can be true at the same time. Just because the police overreacted in this instance doesn't mean they're right, but it also doesn't mean that we can do without the police. You follow me?
Absolutely.
Well, Joseph Ladapo is on the other extreme. There is no doubt in my mind that people have legitimate questions about vaccines. About the COVID vaccine. I should preface this. About the COVID vaccine. And did Anthony Fauci and others engage in the noble lie and tell people that were not necessarily the truth? Yes. Did they get caught with their pants down? Yes. That being said, it doesn't mean that the efficacy of vaccines is in doubt. And no bigger of an oracle than President Trump, who would have thought that I would be picking President Trump, literally came out and was like, RFK might be going a little bit too far with his vaccine stance. Same too with Joseph Ladapo. He is the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, and he is pushing to eliminate all childhood vaccines. Yes, you heard that correctly. All childhood vaccines.
Vaccines or vaccine requirements? Like legal requirements to get vaccinated.
Okay. That doesn't change my opinion.
Okay.
He is my whack job of the week. In a large group area, we live in a society. You said this. We as a society bestow upon the police the right to force and so forth. We as a society bestow upon government the right to keep us safe. That's one of those instances, and it's identifiable, that vaccines have worked and have, what do they call it? The community rating, or what exactly is it?
Oh, herd immunity?
Herd immunity.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was trying to remember the words. Vaccines work. Just because people were misled over the COVID vaccine, just like the Democrats on the other side or the liberals on the other side, oh, George Floyd was killed, let's get rid of the police. No, just because you were misled about COVID doesn't mean vaccines don't work. So Joseph Ladapo, the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, pushing to remove this requirement, he's undoubtedly my whack job of the week, Tim.
All right. Yeah, most vaccines do a lot of good. I'm told.
Even President Trump said it.
Yeah.
So... And as you know, he is not somebody that I turn to for sagacious and wise counsel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be horrible. So my hero, John, is a rather remarkable man. He didn't go to university or study with scholars. He traveled about, talking and teaching. He talked about things like God, values, truth. There was love, and there's also admonishment. Day in and day out, he was in the public square, answering questions, engaging. He drew crowds of people who heard his message. They'd try to trap him in debates, and there were powerful factions who didn't like what he had to say. They accused him of various things. They even misrepresented him. Then, in his early 30s, he was put to death. He's my hero of the week.
I have a hunch who you're speaking of, too.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I like it, Tim. I like it. Well, listen, pal, as always, this is the very purpose. This is, as I say, the raison d'etre of our discussion. This is why we exist, to have intelligent debate about issues. And we didn't solve it, but you know what we did? We discussed it.
Yeah.
So I will sign off by saying it was great talking to you as always. And by the way, am I wrong in saying this? This has pretty much been our friendship. This is exactly how we were in college 31 years ago, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, not much has changed except a couple pounds and a few less hairs.
Yeah.
But listen, say hello to everybody. And this is John Boland signing off saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
And this is Tim saying, we decry political violence. I didn't say that explicitly yet. But I will say that if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Take care out there.